March is such a weird month. Sometimes it's warm and sunny. Sometimes it's cold and rainy. My reading list this month is probably going to be pretty similar. So I've got a handful of reading recommendations based on new books that are coming out this month. I've got everything from thrillers to cozy sheepdog mysteries. Welcome back, friends. If you are new here, my name is Melissa. I'm the dyer behind Rising Tide Fiber Company, and I am an avid reader. And I love nothing more than new books coming out. I love to find new things to add to my TBR. So I have a handful to share with you. Today I'm going to start with a couple of thrillers. If you've been around here for some time, you know this is kind of like my bread and butter. This is what really gets me going. And I've got two that are coming out in March that I'm kind of excited for. The first book I have for you is called The Keeper by Tana French. This is actually the third book in a trilogy, but this novel piqued my interest. It's supposed to be concluding the story of a retired Chicago detective that's living in a small Irish village. The plot of the book centers around the death of a young woman, and it's pulling the detective and his fiance and an adopted ward of the state. It's pulling them all into this small village, local community feud that's being fueled by a powerful businessman in the community. And it's just really threatening everybody's peaceful life. And it sounds like dark and messed up stuff happening in a really close-knit Irish village. And so that piqued my interest. This one is supposed to be a atmospheric crime fiction. So if you like crime fiction, this is probably definitely up your alley. It does fall under suspense or literary mystery. The first two books in the series, if you're interested, are called The Searcher and The Hunter. And then this final installment is called The Keeper. It releases at the end of the month on March 31st. The second book I have for you, I think really falls into thriller horror. This one is called Turn Off the Light, and it is by Jacquie Walters. This is one of those books where we have two women that are living centuries apart, but they're going to be bound by the same dark secret. Some are saying this is going to kind of upend us on the whole, because it's combining the haunted house and that beach read and kind of meshing those two things together. So that really kind of piques my interest. So we're following Edith from the 1600s and Claire in the present day. They're both connected to this haunted house on the eastern shore of Virginia, and it's haunted by some dark ancient evil. Edith from the 1600s is a healer who is accused of witchcraft, and Claire is actually returning home to care for her dying father. So both these women end up unearthing dark secrets about this house, and then somehow they're going to be working together to survive whatever the supernatural threat is. It has early reviews that are kind of praising it because there's this slow burn dread, which I think is probably the horror part of it. There's a lot of emotional depth to it, and it explores topics of motherhood and trauma. This one is due to release on March 3rd. Next up, I have what I'm calling the emotional roller coasters. These are what get labeled as romances, women's fiction, call it what you will. I love them. And first up, we have the next book in the series of the Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. So if you loved that book, even though I know some people had mixed feelings about it, I think most of us really enjoyed it. The next book is coming out on March 24th, and it is called The Night We Met. And this one has a really interesting plot to it because we're following Larissa and Chris, and they are best friends, and they actually co-parent a dog. But Chris and Larissa they're best friends, but they have a really complicated relationship because Larissa chose to ride home one night after a concert with Chris's best friend, Mike, and now she's dating him. So this is supposed to revolve around that what if scenario. Like if you made a different choice one night, like what would have happened if she had gone home with Chris after that concert? So this is, I think, going to examine some themes about friendship, difficult choices, and I think there's going to be a slow burn romance, and I think we're dealing with a friends to lovers. So that's my first recommendation. Again, it comes out on March 24th. So the next book I have in this series also has a little bit of magical realism in it, which this author is very well known for. It's Rebecca Serle. She has a new book called Once and Again coming out on March 10th. And she has always done really beautiful novels that have just the slightest hint of magical realism, just enough where it still feels like it could happen. And so this one really intrigues me. She's an author that I think I've read everything she's written, but this is about 3 generations of women in the Novak family, and they have this unique ability to be able to turn back time once in their lives. This is going to explore themes of love and family, second chances. I believe one of our characters goes back in time to save her husband from a horrible automobile accident. So basically saving his life. So I'm really excited to see where she goes with this concept. The last book in this segment, I love this author, BK Borison. I want to say she's relatively local, like she lives somewhere in the DMV area. And this is, again, contemporary romance. It's called Now Back to You. This is the second book in the Heartstrings series. The first one was called First Time Caller. I loved that one. First Time Caller reminded me of Sleepless in Seattle, and Now Back to You is supposed to be similar in nature to When Harry Met Sally. So if you know anything about me, you know that I love Nora Ephron films, and those like 90s rom-coms are some of my all-time favorites. So much so I'm dying a year-long collection of yarns called Ephron Essentials. So this book is enemies to lovers, and we're following this plot between 2 rival meteorologists, and they are forced to work together on this assignment. I think there's like this huge storm coming through. I don't even care what else the plot is. I'm a huge BK Borison fan, and she's been knocking them out of the park lately. And the last category I have for you are what I'm calling the palette cleansers. These are meant to be short, kind of cozy novels. First one up, book number 6 in the Finlay Donovan series. I love this series so much. I'm not a huge mystery reader, but these are cozy mysteries, but just ridiculously laugh out loud funny. There's so much shenanigans happening that you can't help but love this. And so this one is Finlay Donovan Crosses the Line. It comes out on March 17th. Things haven't been going well for Finlay. Her nanny, partner in crime, Vero, has been extradited from Virginia over to Maryland, and she's facing criminal charges for theft. And she swears, of course, that she didn't commit them. So I'm looking forward. I think this is the last book, like it's not going any further. So I'm going to love to see how Elle Cosimano really wraps things up in this series, because again, it is so laugh out loud funny. I think even if you started with the first one, because you haven't read any of them up to date, I think you'll love them. The first one is called Finlay Donovan is Killing It. It's a hysterical novel where she's like out to lunch and she's in a conversation, I think with her like book editor, and she writes like murder mysteries, but somebody in another table hears her talking and thinks she's like a hitman and wants to hire her. I'm telling you, they are just hysterical. And the last book that I have in this one is something that just kind of flashed across my radar, and I felt I could not pass up. It is meant to be for all of us wool enthusiasts. This book is called The Danger at the Sheepdog Trials. This is by Amelia Pine. This is actually book 2 in the series, and it comes out on March 27th on Kindle. So I know for some people that's a bit problematic, but I think if you're willing to wait until July, I think you'll be able to get a printed copy. I'm not 100% sure. I never really know with Amazon whether they're saying you can get it in Kindle and you have to wait to get it printed, or if it's just a matter of once it's released, then they'll do like print on demand. The first book in the series was called Murder at the Woolen Mill. It's being themed as the Northwoods knitting mysteries. So for all of us that love those cozy mysteries that are knitting related, I think this one is perfect for us. It takes place somewhere called Frosty Pines, Wisconsin, and we're following Julia Holmes. And in the first book, she wants a fresh start. She leaves a high-stress job. I think she goes and works for her cousin who has like a wool mill. The second one, obviously, it's taking place at some kind of sheepdog trials. She's a yarn shop manager at this point, I guess, and there's a dead body. That's, cozy mystery antics that we're accustomed to. But I'm excited to start a new knitting cozy mystery series and see where it takes us. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel so you can see more content like this. And until next time, friends, happy reading.